Welcome to this month's Friends You Keep. As they say, we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And at Erin Wellness, we believe that sustainable health and wellness is an accumulation of 5 pillars: the thoughts you think, the friends you keep, daily movement, nutrition, and lastly, supplementation. So each month we feature guests doing exceptional things that will hopefully inspire you to step into all you are destined to be. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's Friends You Keep. I am really excited for today's conversation with Dr. Lori Brotto. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So glad to have you on. So Dr. Lori Brotto is a leading expert in women's sexual health and a professor in the UBC Department of Obstetrics and Gynaecology. She holds a Canada Research Chair dedicated to developing accessible treatments for women's sexual concerns, leveraging digital health technologies to expand access. Serving as Executive Director of the Women's Health Research Institute, Dr. Brotto supports nearly 700 members across British Columbia in advancing women's health research. A passionate advocate for women's well-being, Dr. Brotto is a registered psychologist in BC and works directly with individuals to enhance sexual health. She has authored as well Better Sex Through Mindfulness and is a company workbook, earning recognition from the New York Times as one of the top 8 sexual health books, and has also received the UBC Public Education Through Media Award in 2023. Frequently featured in media and documentaries, her most recent appearance, which I have watched and I loved it, on Masterclass, The Magic of Menopause. And just a shout out there, Halle Berry's on that one. Dr. Brotto also encourages young women to pursue careers in STEM and engages with public via social media to promote women's sexual health research. Thank you for coming on. You could do a little more in your life. Your bio seems, really.
No, it's lacking. It's lacking.
Really thrive,
I do have fun though as well. Well, this is all fun, but I also have other kinds of fun.
Yeah. Amazing. So let's kind of go back to how did you come to become a leading sexual? Was that you're a little girl and you had on your vision board, you're like, sexual health is where I want to go?
Absolutely not. No, no. I wish I had that story. I have colleagues that had that story that kind of charted their path and, took up the training opportunities to advance their careers in sexual health science. Mine was very much the opposite. And in fact, I grew up in a household where we didn't talk about sex other than to be told that you don't talk about sex. Yes. And you don't engage in sex. And even if you think about sex, people will know that you're thinking about it. So it was very much the opposite. And when I started volunteering as an undergraduate student, the only person that would take me on as a volunteer, it turned out, I didn't know it at the time when I knocked on his door, but he was studying animal models of sexual dysfunction. And so I basically spent 6 years watching rats have sex, and I became an expert in male rat, by the way, sexual behavior. And I would do things like stress the rats, put them in kind of crowded environments, and really look at the impact of context and social interaction and stress on sexual activity of the male rat. And did that for quite a long time. It reaffirmed my love of science, and at the same time, kind of left me feeling a little bit puzzled because we were using the male rat as a model of human female sexuality. But the reason we weren't studying female rats is because of the influence of their hormones, right? Those pesky hormones that get in the way of everything, quote unquote. And so I finally made the switch from animal research to human research once Viagra was approved. And although that might seem like, well, why would Viagra make you switch? Because it's on males, and wouldn't you stay with males? Well, what actually happened with me is Viagra was getting so much press and so much attention. It was blockbuster, and everyone was talking about it, and doctors were prescribing it left, right, and center. And because I was still a graduate student at the time, just did a literature search on, is there a female Viagra? Mm-hmm. And I learned very quickly, it was a very quick literature search, that there was nothing like that for women. There was nothing approved in the way of pharmaceuticals. And in fact, there was so little science that was being done to understand female sexuality, except for the fact that we knew that sexual concerns in women were at least twice as prevalent in females as they were in males. So that led me to then steer my training in the direction of studying human female sexual response And from there, it was just sort of, a mixture of curiosity and opportunity and serendipity and different things like that that led me down the path to where I am today.
Wow. And when you look at women, what is, I mean, I know that I've always really struggled with
Hmm.
libido. That's something I've
Hmm.
always struggled with.
Yeah,
I've had, I kind of do a joke of it. I'm like, I had a younger, good-looking boyfriend. It wasn't him. There was
yeah,
something, and I also come from a very Christian background,
yeah,
right? So not only was sex not talked about, but God
yeah,
forbid you ever think of touching yourself.
right.
I think the first time I ever touched myself, like full disclosure, like I was like
Yeah,
21 and I felt
yeah,
so guilty and so much
yeah,
shame over it because
yeah,
I'm not supposed to do that. And I know exactly where I was. I still remember the moment very clearly. And even though nobody was there, I still felt guilt or shame.
yeah,
So that narrative, that
yeah,
story that, I don't deserve to have sexual pleasure and
yeah,
it's something I shouldn't be having. And I mean, it not only comes from just Christianity and that was, our family, but I think it still is somewhat there in society. I guess it's
yeah,
changed a bit, and we can change that with our
yeah,
conversations with our daughters. But is
yeah.
that one of the biggest things you think is the issue with women with sexual health? It's still there is still that kind of undercurrent of that narrative
Yeah.
of don't be a bad girl kind of thing.
Yeah, so unfortunately, it does still exist.
Yeah.
And, we might be surprised by that because don't we live in like a sex saturated society? Like there's sex messages everywhere, and there's apps that, can connect you with a sexual partner, and there's bulletin boards depicting sex. And yet, in reality, the reality is that a lot of people struggle when it comes to their sexual health. They don't have the communication skills to ask for what they want or tell a partner when things don't feel good. The vast majority of women who struggle in this area never reach out for help, never talk to a healthcare provider. And yeah, there is still this kind of cultural taboo around women's sexuality. And thank you, Freud. That's a legacy from Freud's era where women were labeled as either frigid if you weren't interested, or a nymphomania, which is a terrible term that unfortunately still lingers today. But yeah, so the woman who was, empowered and embodied and enjoyed her sexuality and asked her what she wanted and masturbated, she was labeled as a nymphomania.
Yeah.
And we would never do that with men, right? In
Never,
fact, that
never.
it's such a double standard. So yeah, things are slowly changing. I'd say more so in Canada than in other parts of the world right now, especially. But we still have a long way to go.
And do you think some of the actions, I mean, I know in our household, because I have a teenage daughter, and I'm sure she'd be so glad I'm going to talk about this, but I have tried to have very open sexual conversations. And even, she's turning 17, so there are conversations of this is, going to be happening.
Yeah,
You have a partner you've kind of been with for a while, and I don't want to pretend it's never going to happen and say don't have sex because
yeah,
that's ignorant too. So really creating a platform or a home where she can come and talk to me whenever need be. But also, I really want her to understand how to pleasure herself
yeah,
and how to enjoy her own body because,
yeah,
I've dated
yeah,
men who are in their 40s who have no idea what they're doing.
yeah,
So, the chances of somebody who's a teenager, probably won't as
yeah,
well. So I guess
yeah,
to me, part of that is having those conversations with our young girls about exploring your body and understanding what brings you to orgasm, what an
yeah.
orgasm is, and how you have every right to enjoy yourself. I mean, are those some of the actions I guess we think we can be taking, correct?
100%.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Because right now, sex education, first of all, if you're lucky enough to get it,
yeah,
it's not mandated in our school districts. And so it's really up to the individual school districts or school whether they teach sex education. So that's problem number one is
yeah,
it absolutely should be a part of the core curriculum. But even when it is delivered, it's very much focused on puberty and development and sexually transmitted infections and things like that. There is rarely a segment on consent and pleasure and agency. And, what does this mean for you in terms of who you are and your quality of life? Unfortunately, one of the things that we are seeing that is more of a concern in young girls than in young boys is active engagement in sexual activity without any agency. So it's not that it's not consensual, but it's questionably consensual. So it's the young girls who are engaging in sexual activity to be popular or because they feel like they should be doing this or to fit in. So Peggy Orenstein's book, Girls and Sex, talks about this. And for any parent It's a real eye opener to read that book and realize it's actually a lot more prevalent than we care to think, and is exactly why, as you pointed out, Erin, why we need to be having these conversations with young people today.
Yeah, and having this open dialogue. I fully agree with you. Um, and so I want to talk a bit about your books because I love the connection between mindfulness and human sex and sexuality, obviously human sexuality. But with my pillars of air and wellness, the first pillar is the thoughts you think. Because
Hmm.
to me, that's the most important thing is,
It is.
your brain is going to make you work out, eat healthy, do all the, have positive relationships, everything. So that's the real one you really need to focus on first. So I love the idea of connection of mindfulness and also sexual well-being. So how do you translate that when you're talking about mindfulness and sex?
Yeah. Thoughts are, I mean, the brain is the biggest sex
Yeah,
organ, right? We tend to
it's
think
very
it's
true.
the genitals and, other things. Nope, it's the brain, because the brain instructs the body when to respond with arousal and pleasure, and then receives feedback from the body when things feel good, and then tells the body whether to continue or not. And so, because the brain is the biggest sex organ, we want to do the things that promote the brain's kind of cultivation of arousal, and we want to eliminate the barriers. And so, definitely thoughts, it can be a major barrier. And so, sometimes the thoughts can be negative and judgmental thoughts, like, I'm not sexy enough, I've gained weight, don't touch me there, you're not going to enjoy it. Will I reach orgasm? So those really kind of judgmental and critical thoughts about sex that absolutely get in the way. But then there can also be benign distractions, right? And I have the pleasure in my role as a psychologist to ask people, what do they think about as they're having sex? And the number of times that women will say, or people in general, but especially women, will say, I'm just distracted. I'm thinking about my to-do list. I'm thinking about whether I turn the oven off. I'm planning, this weekend. And while those distractions feel benign, they're really not benign because they interfere with the brain. Again, it comes down to the brain's really critical role in sexual response. So thoughts are first and foremost. And so where mindfulness is relevant to this is mindfulness, which is a practice of present moment, non-judgmental awareness, is a way of, what do I do when those thoughts start to bombard my mind? It's not about emptying the mind. It's about redirecting the mind away from the thoughts, back to the body, back to the here and now, back to the sensations.
Mm.
And so in that way, it's not only powerful. I have argued that it's probably an absolutely essential ingredient for satisfying sex.
I would totally agree with you on that. I mean, I think one of the big things as well, um, with my partner that I'm with is one of the first times I feel really safe with him. I think that's a big thing too, that I never knew how much I needed that before. I thought I felt safe before, but I feel more safe now in the sense of our emotional relationship with everything together. There's no, I feel I can fully express, and maybe that's come with age as well, being, midlife. I'm like, now I don't care as much. I'm like, whether you like it or not, this is what I like, right?
Yeah.
So I have more freedom.
Yeah.
I think also looking at our partners and having conversations about creating a space where you can say anything and there is no judgment. It's like,
Yeah.
it's the two of you together in this experience. And I
Yeah.
guess when somebody's been in a long relationship, I mean, mine's fairly new, so it's easy to kind of set those right
Yeah.
from the get-go. You're like, this is what I want. But if you've been in a
Yeah.
long-standing 25-year relationship,
Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine that would be so challenging to
It is.
back and create that space when all of a sudden, or that safe place when you feel that you've never had that.
Yeah.
What do you tell patients when they come to you? I mean, you must have patients
Yeah.
in long-term relationships who are
Yeah.
like, I don't know
Yeah.
how do you just have a conversation and kind of hope for the best? Is that what
Yeah.
yeah?
Yeah. So, one of the challenges in a long-term relationship is we adopt the belief they should know what I want,
Yeah.
right? We've been together for 25 years. They should know. And if they don't, then I'm resentful, etc.
Yeah.
But sexual response is such a personal feeling. There's no way even a partner who knows you so intimately could know what things feel like. Also, because throw in the fact that through perimenopause, through midlife transition, through aging, our sensations change, right? So maybe the kinds of things that used to feel really good in your 20s or 30s or even 40s now actually don't feel the same way in a positive or in a negative way. And so, yeah, it really does come down to communication. So,
Yeah.
how do you bring that up? It's not easy for some people, right? Maybe there is that embarrassment, even in this long term trusting, really kind of close relationship. So, first of all, remind yourself that sexual health is a part of health. It's a
Mhm.
part of quality of life. So if that gives you some extra oomph to, why this is so important. The second thing that I often say to people is, when we look at the really big studies that have been done, and we look at who are the people who continue to be sexually active and sexually satisfied in their 70s and 80s and beyond, it's those couples who have talked about sex,
Yeah.
right? It's the ones who have said, you know what, I've just had surgery, I can't do this. Can we put this on the back burner for 6 months,
Yeah.
right? Rather than just not talking about it at all. So sexual communication is totally critical. And then how to do it? Well, you can say, oh, I listened to Erin's podcast interview and they talked about sexual health as a part of quality of life and health. And, I know we've never done that, but how do you feel, darling, about having a conversation about
Yeah.
what's it been like for you? Do
Yeah.
you enjoy it? Are there things we could do different? So we just sort of need to just do it.
Yeah, and just go for it. And so, for somebody who is struggling even with their own sexual health, and facing barriers to education and resources, I know that you're a very big advocate for that. So, what resources can somebody turn to, or what resources are there that they could go to possibly and look for something as well?
Yeah. Yeah, so this is going to be really quite individual. So if a person has a primary care doctor and trusts that person, and they've sort of demonstrated themselves to be someone that they can be very vulnerable and open with, start there. We one of the first things to sort of rule out or keep in mind is, are there physical medical contributors to this? So like menopause is a great example. We know that with the perimenopausal transition, as estrogen and progesterone tanks, that it can lead to vaginal dryness, which can lead to pain, which can lead to low desire.
Yeah.
And so you kind of want to start with, what are some of the really common medical and physiological contributors to that, and make sure that those are managed and dealt with. So if a person has diabetes and they have neuropathic pain, or they have, loss of sensation, we want to make sure that the diabetes is well managed. So I often advocate that people start there. And I recognize that a lot of people don't have a primary care doctor to do that. So figuring out, is it through a walk-in clinic? Is it through an urgent care center, that we really kind of do that, well woman exam, if you will, to see what might be some of those medical contributors. And then after that, kind of how you seek support again is going to be really individual. Obviously, I'm a psychologist and sex therapist. I always advocate to reach out to an expert, and even just for one session where you sort of do a deep dive into what are all of the things in your life and in your thinking and in your emotions and in your psychology that could be contributing to your current sexual health. And a lot of us sex therapists are also registered psychologists, so there's some benefits, coverage that could pay for some of that. So keeping that in mind as well. And then in terms of mindfulness, which is a fantastic evidence-based treatment for low desire, there's different ways to access mindfulness. As you
One will
said,
be reading a book. One will
I
be
wrote a book on it for that
read a
reason,
book.
because I want the book to
Yeah.
be a tool for people
Yeah.
who don't have access to a therapist. But even signing up for a mindfulness class, downloading a mindfulness app, and even just starting there.
Yeah.
And then from there, once you have those skills, you can integrate them into your sexuality.
Awesome. And so you do so much incredible work. How do you find, so does the word exist for you, balance? And how do you find time for that for yourself?
Yeah. So absolutely. I mean, first of all, I drop balls all the time.
Yeah.
I absolutely drop balls.
That's nice to hear.
Sec Oh,
Because you
balls
are
all
amazing.
around me. On the ground here. Tons of balls all
It's
around.
everywhere.
Secondly, I'm really lucky to work with an incredible team of students and research staff and others. And so I have to give credit where credit is due. Part of the reason why I'm able to do as much research as I do, and as much kind of publications, et cetera, is because of the students and the team. So definitely. And taking a step away from work and doing the other things that make me happy. So I'm an avid outdoors person. In the winter, I'm always on the mountain, and in the summer, I'm always on the water.
Mhm.
Thankfully have people in my life that also love to do those things. We also have a dog that needs to walk for 10 kilometers every single day. So there's lots of, outdoor time with that, and, have kids and a partner and everything as well. So balance is critical. I also have an active mindfulness practice myself. So I do practice what I preach, and I
Do
do,
meditation? Do you
yes,
meditate? Do
yeah,
you? How long
I
do you
do.
meditate for every day?
So on average, it's about 15 minutes, but I try and get one long practice per week.
Yeah.
And the longer practices I find are really important because that's when my mind wanders.
Yeah.
And so that's where, the rubber hits the road in terms of being able to really pull my mind back. So I try and get at least one long practice in a week.
And you also train too. I mean,
Yes.
everybody has seen Lori. You look amazing. So you can tell you work out, which I love,
Well, that's
you know?
menopause that's really
Yeah.
done that. I didn't used to lift weights until
Okay.
I really learned. I used to be a competitive runner. And then after having a 10-pound baby and a C-section, I
Wow.
realized I need to find something different because, the impact of running on my pelvic floor was
Yeah.
just terrible. So, and I am so convinced with all the science on resistance training for midlife women, for cushioning those bones,
Yeah.
for trying to prevent osteoporosis. So, yeah, it's great to feel fit to be able to do the activities that I love to do. But I'll admit, I am scared of osteoporosis. I do not want to break a bone. I do not want to end up in a nursing home. So that's also a big part of the reason why I lift.
Yeah, me too. And I mean, I think also when you look at the connection to sexual health,
Yeah,
feeling good in your body, feeling powerful, right?
yeah,
And that's really, when I do the talks and stuff and I'm talking about lifting weights, I'm like,
yeah,
I sell supplements. It's what I do. I said, but if
yeah,
you can take away from tonight and go join a gym, take
yeah,
time for yourself, put your own air mask on
yeah,
first, you will
yeah,
stress relief, like everything. You're not
yeah,
going to be going out to the bar having drinks at night or smoking a cigarette,
yeah.
going to the gym in the morning for the most
That's
part.
right.
You kind of start changing your life and it makes such a dramatic impact, I think, on all avenues, right? And especially even with sexuality
Totally.
too, right?
Oh,
But more limber,
absolutely.
you got some more, cardio in you. You can go a little more.
Right. Well, and like we don't have a separate fuel tank that
Yeah,
fuels sex. It's going to come from this our reserves.
yeah,
And so, yeah, having good cardio,
yeah.
having weights to hold yourself,
Yeah.
especially if there's certain positions that require holding yourself up,
Gotta
just
have good
saying.
quad strength. You
Good
got
quad,
like your quads are called into action,
sometimes a single arm tricep,
right?
holding
Back
yourself.
arch. There's all this stuff going on. You need to work out. If anything, step away from the conversation. The way people are like, I need to start training for this.
So
Be
true.
mindful and work out so I can have good sex. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so what is these are the fast questions. What is your one thing you would tell your 20-year-old self?
Oh, it's going to be okay.
Yeah,
Right? It's going to be just fine.
yeah, I agree.
Really, there's not just one path. There's
Mhm.
not just one right and one wrong decision. I'm a big believer of, you make a decision and then you make it the right decision after that. And I wish I knew that as a young person because I was just kind of, tormented with beliefs about, is this the absolute right thing to do?
Yeah.
And then a lot of kind of self-doubt and imposter syndrome and all of that. And I love people who have taken career paths that have twists and turns and serendipity and taking chances and being motivated by curiosity. And yeah, so I try and I mentor a lot of young people and students in research, and they always say to me, "Oh, Dr. Brotto, what's the next thing I have to do?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you want to do?"
Mhm.
Right? And then make it the right thing.
Yeah, I agree with that. Listening to I call it, your God, but your good orderly direction. There's a book by
Oh, yeah.
Cameron back in the day,
Yeah.
The Artist Way, and she calls it your good orderly direction. I'm like
Yeah.
tuning into that and getting silent
Yeah.
times and being like, what's the next best thing? And Oprah says,
Yeah.
next best thing. What's the next
Yeah.
best thing? And then just it will take
Yeah.
you where you need to be. But I agree with that too.
Yeah, and
But
it's really aligned with mindfulness because mindfulness is about being in the here and now.
yeah.
And, it's not about doing away with an overall path,
Mhm.
but kind of imagine what that vision is and then filing it away and then come back to the here and now.
Yeah, I agree with that. What is your go-to treat? you salty? Are you sweet? What is it?
I'm a 100% savory
Are
person.
you?
Yeah, chips,
Gin. I thought you said
always.
gin, and I was like, gin. All right.
Yeah, I do like gin too. Salt and vinegar chips,
Vinegar chip. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to limit that, but I also don't deprive myself of salt and vinegar chips.
What is your favorite swear word? You can swear.
Shut the front door.
Yeah.
I know, it's like because I can say it anywhere and I'm not worried about.
Okay.
Like, shut the front door.
That's a good one. Everybody seems to love the F-bomb seems to be winning like 90% of these conversations.
Yeah, I like a good F-bomb.
Like a good F-bomb every now and then. Yeah. And what is your favorite book or podcast? Favorite?
Oh, yeah, I've got a list of favorite books. I'm still gonna have to come back to Untamed, Glennon Doyle's Untamed.
So good. That was
which
such a great book.
After I read her book, I actually got a tattoo of Eve on my leg because she talks about, Eve in the Garden of Eden before Eve was tempted to take the apple, and then women were basically doomed and blamed ever since then. And I finished that book and I went and got a tattoo of Eve holding the apple. And for me, it kind of symbolizes, our potential before the world changed. And it's just, I mean, I love that book and I love my tattoo as well. I love Untamed, and we're all goddamn cheetahs.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea before wear it. I love that. That's a great tattoo. So where can people find you? I know that you obviously are on social media, but can you plug everywhere where people can actually find you and follow you? And
yeah, for sure. So Dr. Lori Brotto on Instagram mostly. And if anyone's interested in our research, in fact, right now we're recruiting for several different studies, primarily women who are struggling with their sexual health, either related to psychological issues, relationship issues, cancer issues. And so for that, my research Instagram handle is UBCSHR. So it stands for University of British Columbia Sexual Health Research. And then I've got a couple of different websites. LoriBrotto.com can be a place where if anyone's interested in actually using some of my mindfulness meditations, I've recorded a bunch on there and you can just download them. And they're all different lengths from 3 minutes all the way up to, I think 40 minutes is the longest one on there. So that's how you can find me.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for having this conversation today. It was great. I absolutely loved it.
Me too.
And thank you, everybody, for joining. Stay tuned for next time for The Friends You Keep.